conceivably, cold fusion will be part of that. Although cold fusion brings into it now radiation, and 0-point energy really doesn't. So in that sense, I'd like to stick with 0-point energy because I think it's already there. Radiation doesn't really play a part at all. Even cold fusion puts out stuff. It's certainly a lot better than uranium. I'm not talking to that. And focus fusion is in the same category if you've looked at that. That's another one that people have worked on for a long time. And that's a lot better than... And hot fusion is 50 years away. That thing is so far away and so ridiculous that why work on it? It's so expensive. It just makes no sense. 0-point energy is the way we have to go.
Hallelujah. This is Paula Gloria, and this is an episode of Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm streaming to you from rabbitholecentral.tv. You already know that if you're listening to me in this moment exactly. But if you're not listening to me in this moment exactly, in other words, if I've taped it and posted it, then you can in the future see the daily stream from 12 noon, Monday through Friday, at rabbitholecentral.tv, and then you click on the Egyptian rabbit. So I want to say right now, Beers, a viewer, Blasting Cap, suggested to me, I don't know, when I was sort of going over a lot of the comments, he had asked me about secret societies or something like that. And I had to plow through 300 comments on one video alone, and I couldn't get to it all. And he was very perceptive to say sometimes it's important just to chill out, to sort of loosen up a little bit. And not exactly not take things so seriously, but just to be balanced. So this is my first day back from being in Ohio, in Columbus. We streamed every day, but none of it was saved. That's something I'm going to be working on, how to save the stream to the server. But yesterday, I was able to go down the Brandywine River in southern Pennsylvania, and Molly was so surprised because I took somebody up on their offer for a beer. We were in 2 different canoes, and this was, oh yeah, and Blasting Cap said, you deserve at least 1 beer, but make sure it's strong. So this is Italian beer, and it's called Peroni. So I don't know, any of you beer viewers out there know about that. I've never seen it before. But anyway, Blasting Caps, it was a good call. Blasting Caps and I'm going to be a guest on his radio show, which is July 4th, and I'm not entirely sure how to get to it. I hope that he gets his own website going. I would like to see it be blastingcaps.com. Also, I'm going to soon post, I hope. I've got a very, very slow stream going here right now. What I did, the last show that I did, and Ugly George had called in. I was talking about the whole thing about being transparent and whether it was dangerous or not to leave your address out. I had been advised that it was dangerous, but in truth, I've seen some people that some would say, you know, oh, they're stalkers, or, you know, beware and watch out. Just turn out some wonderful work. I mean, really, really touching of, you know, tributes that make you feel better. And another thing I noticed is that when we create the alternative media, or the media that we like, and we put our energy into it, knowingly or unknowingly, our energy will affect whatever we put in, wherever we put it. It's sort of an adage, whatever you put your attention on, that's what grows in life. So I told you the other day I was going to do these premiums or give people things, because that's what other charities do, and now that I'm getting all squared away with the IRS, and I even want to go beyond a private foundation. A 501c3 will work fine for what we have now, but to do a public foundation is a 60-month process, and you have to work with the IRS. So the show that I taped, the IRS had called up, and it was so interesting, and about 100 of you saw it because I went flying out of town and posted it without cutting that out, because afterwards he said that I couldn't record what he had said. And it was so interesting. So I'm going to call the IRS and see if I can post it, because I think a lot of you would be interested in knowing how those work. I mean, I'm not one for tearing down the institutions. I'm for sharing the capital assets of the exact same institutions, just letting others in on it. I know the word privatization is a bad word, and I totally agree. I can start talking about what goes on with the post office, because my father used to build post offices. My dad's a contractor, and my two brothers are. But allowing more people to have private property or capital ownership means you'll have a diversification of the power and of the wealth. Most wealth comes from capital. It doesn't come from labor. So it's not a matter of, sort of dropping out and being in a little cult and having a bunch of people that agree with you and sort of throw your weight around. What you want to make sure is that you have access to the fundamental wealth of society. And so what I was doing, to be like other charities, is saying anybody that would donate, I would send these chocolate-covered macadamia nuts. And also my friend Molly has a wonderful DVD or CD of her songs. This is Molly Cheshire. There's going to be, for those of you that watch the stream, Molly and I were streaming together. So you can specify if you want her DVD. She's got a great voice. She also was singing to the Swami we were studying with in the south of India, because she noticed that his birthday and Elvis Presley's was on the same day. So if you send a donation, for some reason the passwords are locked with the Concordia Foundation, but if you go right over to paulagloria.com, I'm going to start to be sending out letters so that you can get your tax write-offs. But here's a family. I'll cover up their name and address. And he's a martial arts teacher wouldn't you like to get something so attractively packaged? Because I asked for stamps because I thought it'd be cheerful. It's such a joy to be able to do something like this, because this man in particular made a commitment to himself that he wanted to support media that was supporting nonviolent communication. And I can't begin to tell you, the first $100 that he sent in, what an enormous, huge lift it was to get that. To know that there are people out there who care and moreover will express their concern in that way. But there were some time went by and I didn't hear from him, and I thought, oh, does he think that, I'm not so nonviolent anymore? And then I was thinking, gee, that's too bad, but I knew in my heart I had to go the way that I felt was a true and correct way. But what's interesting was he did connect with me, because I did ask it, and he said there was some, I guess a little financial pinching, which I can totally understand. Molly said a friend of ours, a mutual friend, more of a friend of Molly's, who works at Citibank and who we visited in her fabulous apartment in Hong Kong, is totally walking away from all her options. So it does seem as though, rats are leaving the ship. Here, there's my kitty making all the noise. So I can understand financial setbacks, and we have to be very clever to sort of stay where our source of power comes from, so that we can, find the abundance and express it. Tune into nature, tune into little animals when they're asking that, feel the purring, and it'll balance you and it'll ground you. But what was interesting is when I got a check again from this family that's, through the father making a dedication to using nonviolent communication in media, without even thinking, I realized that my work was starting to reflect that. So that instead of, just putting a label on somebody, no matter how justified you feel the label is, try to empathize with them and understand why they're saying and doing the things that they're saying and doing. So what I'm going to do now is open up the telephones. I think I had somebody that was calling me. Spencer, if you're out there, give me just 5 minutes, because I see that in rushing back I didn't get the telephone hooked up. But I'll do that now, and the phone number is listed there. 212-982-0021. So there you go. If someone's out there, yesterday the stream was going on for about 2 hours at Molly's, and we were running out of tape because I only taped the last part of it. Somebody had left some interesting comments on direct experience with sex and spirituality. I think it was part 2, and it was interesting, his comments, and then also how he got there. And I had wanted to start the show talking about the Alexander technique with the person who was doing sunlight therapy, but she was not in agreement of my metaphors of relating body work, or our individual body, to the social body or the body politic. But what I was trying to do with that is showing that just like the body moves slowly, you can't just tell somebody, well, maybe Jesus was able to do some amazing things with the body on the spot. And I have had some experiences myself with with energy and how that will affect things that you think wouldn't be affected by energy. But generally speaking, changing patterns in the body is a long-term process. And there was a man named Alexander. He was in the Victorian times, and he was actually an Australian. And he worked with the body. Let's see. Rabbit Hole Central.
Hello.
Is this Spencer?
Hello, it's Harold just saying hello.
Oh, hi, Harold. I was expecting somebody to be calling about nonviolent communication. Do you want to say anything about the Alexander technique? Because I did a voiceover.
Very much about it, but it's...
Do you want to lower your computer?
Well, that's the thing. The computer and then the phone. I got a different phone and it's loud. Just waking up. I was up late last night. Did a couple programs. I don't know very much about it. It's a thing that helped you a lot with your...
What I was trying to do was show that patterns in the body, you can just intellectually say, I want to stand taller, but this man, Alexander, was an actor.
Yeah.
And he noticed when his voice was going out that the more he put himself into the actor's stance, the worse his voice was. So he began to question his perception of what correct was. And he worked with the mirror for many months. I mean, my feeling is, even though he didn't even know about yoga, because he was in Victorian times, he was a great observer of his own body, and he was really the quintessential yogi. And so, because I had this back surgery, and yoga, nothing addressed it like the Alexander technique did, I became very much devoted to the process because it got me out of such pain that I had even at a young age. So that as I got older, I became, through this kind of awareness, I became aware of when the pain would come up and know what part it had to do with posture, and then what my psychological frame of mind was when that stance was taking place. So what I am hoping to do actually is work with my Alexander teachers to see if we can get a grant from some of the organizations that want to put more ecological awareness into the environment, or maybe awareness about spirituality, because oftentimes meditators or those who are promoting meditation are unaware that the body is very uncomfortable, and if the body's uncomfortable, the mind is going to be very distracted, and it's going to be hard to settle down. So it's kind of another pronged approach to meditation. And then my feeling is people, the reason I juxtapose your show with Christine Ebersole is because I was really excited about her work, and I was excited about your work. So when people were saying you were interrupting her, I was trying to point out where I felt the interruptions were. And I also felt, though, in looking at it again, there was something about what you knew, because I didn't understand binary economics as well at that time
Yeah.
And I can see in looking at it again that there are places where Christine was probably upset at your interruptions, not understanding where you were taking it, you know, to this fuller place, that so many problems come from economic problems. And so you don't shoot off being an activist because you say, until we have it right, you don't want to go in the wrong way.
That was a great lesson you learned as a young woman. Yeah. You were just a child then?
I was 14 when my spine curved, and then they put 2 metal rods in my back. And then at 21, I had a long meditation course, and the relaxation from the meditation course made my spine relax, and then the metal was in the way. So then I convinced my orthopedic surgeon to remove the rods because my insurance was running out, and I knew I couldn't afford such a costly operation after I was kicked out of the family insurance nest. So since that time, I've given very, very wide berth to the medical industry. I mean, some people claim those rods never should have been put in my back in the first place, and they no longer do it today. But like anything you can take and turn it into a very valuable learning experience. And because of the Alexander technique, this exercise, so to speak, that I went through, putting the rods in my back at 14, having meditation at 21, relax my spine, having it shift again, then removing the rods, but still having, 21 to 14, 6, 7 years of the body kind of, growing from age 14 to 21 with that metal in it, plus the fusion of bone graft from a calf. It's still there, it hasn't disappeared, but I've been able to work around it, and I always seek out very great body workers wherever I am. And one place where you'll find very great body workers, both teachers of the Alexander technique and also Feldenkrais, is in Israel. Israel has so many teachers, healers, amazing, and the country's so little, they usually have to leave the country because they can't support themselves just within the population of that country. So,
wow, that's a lot of experience you've got.
Yeah, and it also shows that when I start to question Zionism, it's not by any means that I don't have a great love for Tel Aviv and being in that country. And again, when I was there, I found that the healers, the people that I hung out with, were as critical of their government as a lot of the healers are here. But thanks to people like you, Harold, thanks to my public access show that gave me a really good start into having something to post on the internet, through commenters, I've been able to learn more and more and more.
Did I hear you say that when you were 14 you were having great pain?
I wasn't actually having pain, but within 1 month my spine moved off center that much.
No. Was that like what they call scoliosis?
That was scoliosis.
Yeah, that's a really.
And then we were shown X-rays where the spine was like an S from one side of the back to the other.
No.
And it happens during puberty, and it usually happens for girls. And the best theory I ever heard was it's because a woman's nervous system body is more invested in the reproductive cycle. And his theory was that the cloacic response was where the same duct for elimination and fertilization was the same. And it was this primitive response when you switched over at puberty to being a reproducing being, that this kind of shock, his theory was that any type of shock that could have hit in this very slim time of transition, he thought it was even a month or so, not necessarily around the menses time, but maybe around that. And men can have it too, but it's not so often the case with men. It's more often with women.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a you were going through a unique experience, I guess, but it's pretty widespread among women, I understand. But
well, listen to this. It doesn't happen in India. They never see it in India. But if you take Indians out of India, you bring them to London, which is where Alexander was practicing, you find the same percentages in London. So it seems to be a function of the stress in society, or that type of civilization. And I bet you anything today that this was 20 years ago in India. I bet today you're going to see evidence of scoliosis in India. And I'm not sure if you'll get a good enough teacher to address it, because you would have to have a yoga teacher that's not mechanically handing out postures, which do have great power, but to understand how to use which posture. Like the great teacher I had taught me in my sari. So it was nothing at all athletic or vigorous. It was just like lifting one arm up 2 times on one side and maybe 6 times on the other side. Just that simple would cause a big shift in my spine. In 2 weeks, there was an enormous change.
I think that's amazingly interesting that you don't find that syndrome in India.
At that time, 20 years ago,
20 years ago, but you didn't find it in the Indian.
Yeah, my guess is today you will, because they're just making it. They're just beating a path to emulate us in every way. And as a matter of fact, Harold, I found through my demographics on YouTube that I have a lot of viewership in India because of my commentaries on the Mahabharata, and I've had Indians both in India and abroad, particularly younger people, compliment me and say that I know more about their tradition than they do. And that's flattering, but it kind of makes me sad. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do indeed. Yeah, that's a big issue, because east is east and west is west.
Can you speak more into the telephone so I can record this better?
Well, if you want, I haven't been able to fine-tune this darn telephone. It's a new one, so it might be too loud or something.
No, it's not too loud for me. You used to be too loud. Harold?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's different now. I'm hearing you different. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I'm just waking up. I just woke up. I was up late last night doing a lot. We taped a couple programs up at M&M. But that thing you were saying was really interesting about the thing. I just had a gentleman in India, Mr. J.C. Kapoor, has been sending me stuff. And he's very much, he was a great good friend of Bucky Fuller. And do you realize Bucky Fuller is going to have that event at the Whitney?
Oh, right.
Thursday, and I think tonight on you got a cat.
Yes.
Where's that come from?
I was taking care of Alan's cats, and, they're getting along pretty well here.
Yeah, look at that. That's great. Aren't they wonderful? Yeah.
Wonder if I can.
Anyway, they're going to have that's all really interesting indeed. You know, that thing about the yogic thing. You said there's a lot of people doing Alexandria or something like that.
Yeah, well, did you catch the stream at Molly's where a lady called in who, by looking at the sun, she said it was anecdotal and she was apologetic, but Molly and I were very impressed that she had a big blood clot that was a couple inches long even, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how they measure it. And the blood thinners that she was taking wasn't affecting it, and she stopped taking the blood thinners. And it seemed as though just gazing at the dawn sun, I guess the membranes in the eyes, the blood is closest to it. It picks up, whatever ultraviolet light beneficial effects the sun is giving, and she got rid of the blood clots.
That's something, yeah.
And the problem is, in this society, big grants are not given for therapies that at the end of the grant is not going to produce a drug that can be sold.
Yeah.
There's no motivation to study this rigorously, so I think we have to depend on anecdotal evidence or the sharing. And again, YouTube would be a great place where you could do it. You could set up a website with the drug trials. Let people find the side effects themselves. There's no reason. I remember when the internet was first kind of taking hold, when I went on the island of Cyprus, I had a big passion for alternative medicine. And there was talk about setting up such a website where people themselves could see what the side effects were in the drug trials. They would actually publish not just their interpretation of the drug trials, but actually give all the results. And then people can make their own decisions if they want to take those kind of risks for those side effects.
Yeah, there's great possibilities. That's really interesting. I had a long talk with Bob Dobbs, and he sent me from apropos what you're talking about. Perhaps, I'm not sure, but I don't know if you know his wife, Carolyn.
Yeah.
Carolyn.
Yes.
Dean. She's a medical doctor and also homeopathy or something. She wrote a book called. Bob gave her the title. It's a catchy title, but it was Death by Modern Medicine. And they've now landed in paradise because they're in for 2 years at the beautiful place on the ocean in Hawaii. And in 2 years, they're going to have it'll be finished by then, a very large, I guess like a spa, a luxury spa, you might say, on the west coast of Costa Rica. And Carolyn is the one who's going to be running. It's going to be very much like health-oriented. Alternative health is going to be part of what's going to be done there. And that's where they're going to be practicing from. But she was talking about, I don't know about the yoga thing, but she's into the alternative medicine. She's a major writer on alternative medicine. She's going to head up that.
You know, there was a famous book called Death by Injection written by Eustace Mullins. And my understanding was that Eustace Mullins went to visit Ezra Pound when he was in prison. They say we didn't have political prisoners, but it appears that Ezra Pound was. And Eustace Mullins admired Ezra Pound for his literary abilities, and he was a young writer. And Ezra Pound gave him $5 a week to go to the Library of Congress because Ezra Pound couldn't get there. And he started to do research on a book that eventually became Secrets of the Federal Reserve. So there you go again. Death by Injection and Secrets of the Federal Reserve were written by the same man, Eustace Mullins.
Yeah, I didn't realize he'd written that thing, Death by Injection. Being, on the medical model or something?
Yeah. So in other words, people are looking to the intelligence of the body, the laws and the harmony of the body to emulate.
It's an incredible thing how the body can heal itself if given a chance.
Right.
And that's all interesting, and that's really good. But anyway, they're going to be doing that. And then, as I said to you before, I don't know if you're going to want to get to it or not. But
I'll try to.
Next week, a week from.
Well, I'm leaving on Friday, so I can't get to.
You're leaving this Friday.
Yeah, but how long will it be up?
I'm not sure. It's going to be up for a while. They've got a lot of things from the Fuller Institute in that. Oh, and tonight there's a program on Channel 13. I believe it's at Channel 13 at 9 or 9:30. We want to check the guide and everything. But that's a long documentary about Buckminster Fuller.
I bet it'll be up longer than 3 weeks, don't you think?
Oh, I would think so. I just don't know. I tell you the truth, I've just been concentrating on the next week. That'll be next week here in New York. There's all kinds of things going on all over New York around Fuller, including there was an article in Harper's or something that Bob sent to me where they criticized Fuller in lots of ways and everything like that.
Oh, just a second. My cat's eating a hairball.
Yes, the hairballs do come when the cats are there. Did 2 programs yesterday up at
No, then they throw up, so, again, watching the bodies of the little animals around us and ourselves.
And the big ones, yeah. So we did 2 programs at MNN. One was with a couple that writes children's books.
Oh,
and
that's
that was
nice.
Interesting. They've won a thing called a Caldecott Award, and they publish children's books, and being able, the wife, they've been together about 50 years or something, a lovely couple out of Brooklyn. And they were talking about how they illustrate and put together the children's books. It's really interesting. We were able to get a couple of extra programs done. We did it last night. And they were talking about children are so wonderful. I mean, I can remember reading Horton the Who, or Horton, I forget what it was, to the kids,
Well, according to Alexander, children have really good posture until about 3 years old. And then at 3 years old, the natural support, because a little baby, when you watch how he sits, his spine is naturally lengthened. He doesn't do the collapsing. And he learns that conditioning, and there can be problems later on.
One of the most interesting things I heard you say this morning, and there's always interesting things when you open your mouth and talk, there's interesting coming out, which is a good thing.
And I never know what's going to come out.
I know, you never know what's going to come out when you open your mouth. But anyway, is that thing that the scoliosis thing, it has not been characteristic of the Indian society.
20 years ago.
Yeah, well, 20 years ago, but
because
goes back.
Because now that we have the internet and things like that, we're getting to be one society in a way.
Yeah, one global village, Mr. McLuhan said. And it's all going on very well. That's interesting. And the yoga is a big thing. What do they have? Something called hatha yoga, and then they got different kinds of yoga. But they're very interested, and there's a different tradition in the Indian cultures with the...
Yoga means union. And
does?
And yeah, union.
Union? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
To yoke, and what you're uniting is the absolute with the relative, and you're using the body so that the body can both embrace pure consciousness and also great activity. And usually when people say the Eastern philosophies, they're only thinking of that that Eastern philosophy that refers to pure consciousness. But actually there's a whole body Tantra that has to do with the body. Tantra can also be a process of manifestation. So the body would be a vehicle of manifestation. And I would say, in looking at a lot of the conspiracy theories, it's sort of going beyond what people are normally looking at, but not so far that you begin, that you have the joy and the happiness of having synthesized it, of having understood how there can be such corruption and things aren't just and they're not fair, and yet there's a deeper knowledge of how things stay together, so that when in the Indian tradition, when you would seek knowledge, you would seek knowledge with great humility, and a teacher would have to determine whether you were worthy of the knowledge or you could handle it, I guess you'd say. So that as you get a little bit, instead of being horrified and depressed or discouraged, you continue on until you get to the end. So I think that's what's meant by yoga or union. There's also Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. He was the one talking about the siddhis or the powers. And these seem to be alluded to very, very much in a similar way in Plato's works. Plato also talks, and he says, at some passage, he goes to whoever he's talking to, and he goes, "At this point I must leave you. Not that I wouldn't want to take you with me, but..." And then he sort of sketches out experiences that happen during meditation. Now Patanjali, who was the teacher that left this knowledge, they're called Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So a sutra means a stitch. So again, you're taking these siddhis or these powers and not using them for an end in themselves, but just as a demonstration of how to stitch together this vast creation into the underlying consciousness, or put it all together.
That's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know what else, Harold? If you go up to the Jewish Museum on Fifth Avenue, they have a painting depicting the story of three, it's in Jewish tradition, of three men who got the knowledge and what happened to them. And I can't remember what happened to two of them. I guess one was able to handle it, but one went crazy.